Hey friends, before we get started, whether you're new here or you're a regular, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a thing. We're on our journey to 25,000, and with your help, we'll get there in no time. Thanks for all that you do. Now, on with the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. There are moments in life that make us pause, where the familiar suddenly feels unfamiliar. A house you've known forever begins to breathe differently. A face you recognize stares back at you, but something isn't right. And then there are the voices, sometimes calling out and warning, sometimes just watching in silence. We like to believe we're alone in our experiences, but maybe we're not as isolated as we think. Tonight, we explore what happens when the boundaries between self and stranger, home and haunting, begin to blur. So, let's get started, shall we? So a lot of you have probably seen the Urban Explorer videos on YouTube, the ones where people go to remote locations and film abandoned buildings and structures. My best friend and I got kind of obsessed with them. Some of them end up being spooky, but most of them are just really cool and have interesting history. We live in a small town that happens to be surrounded by even more small towns. So we have lots of old abandoned stuff around us. We weren't trying to film ourselves or anything like that. We just genuinely thought that it seemed like a fun hobby. Our first time out, we explored an abandoned factory, a little under an hour from my house. It was completely gutted. Most of the windows were smashed. Our second spot was an elementary school that shut down a few years back. It still had a lot of desks and books in the rooms. Nothing really happened at either location, but we had fun exploring, finding souvenirs. Our third spot was different. We have a lot of mostly unused old dirt roads that twist all through the woods. There's one that used to have a few houses on it, but there's only one left now. It's been empty for a long time, and it's only 30 minutes away, so we thought this will be a good spot for a quick weekday exploration. Between dinner and chores, we didn't actually get out there till just after 9. It was dark, but that was fine. We didn't expect to see much anyway. The house wasn't very big. We were surprised by the amount of furniture and random junk still laying around. Everything was covered in dust and cobwebs like no one had touched it in decades. There were several holes in the walls, and broken glass was all over the floor in every room. One of the 2 bedrooms still had a mattress. It was covered in huge dark brown stains across the middle and the top. The other bedroom had a broken bunk bed frame and a bunch of children's toys and torn-up coloring books. We checked out the kitchen last. There was a huge hole in the roof and rotten lumber all over the floor. Near the back door was another interior door that led to a surprise basement. The stairs were old and falling apart, but I was dumb enough to try them anyway. My friend waited at the top to see if I would make it. I was about halfway down when I felt everything shift. I tried to turn and go back, but the whole staircase collapsed under me. It was a surprisingly long drop. My ankle snapped sideways, and I instantly knew it was broken. When I could move again, I tried to climb out, but I could barely stand upright, let alone put any weight on my bad foot. My friend is a lot smaller than me, too. There was no way that she could pull me out. We didn't have cell service in there. So she walked around outside. Still no luck. Eventually she had to leave me while she drove back far enough to get some reception. Meanwhile, I was left alone in that dark, creepy basement, unable to move. I didn't consider myself an easily frightened person, not until that moment. I'd never been so grateful for a flashlight. Now that it was quiet, I could hear all of the creaking, groaning noises, which made sense. An entire staircase had just fallen. Of course there was creaking and groaning, but it was still eerie, and being able to see that it was nothing made me feel better. And then the flashlight died, like 2 minutes into my friend being gone. It shouldn't have. It had fresh batteries. But that was fine. I still had my phone, right? Nope. I pushed the flash button and nothing happened. It just didn't cut on. I tried to take pictures and the flash didn't work. I tried turning the phone off and it wouldn't come back on. So I didn't have the screen light then. The battery wasn't dead. It was still over 50% when I tried the flashlight. I stood there in the pitch black, unable to move. The noises got louder then. I reminded myself the debris were still settling, and then I started to hear other things. Something heavy fell by the wall to my left. It was a heavy but dull thud, like something soft or wrapped in fabric. It didn't sound like metal or wood. And then it began to slide across the floor. It was almost like when you drag a duffel bag along beside you, if you pause after each step. It was coming towards me. It stopped a few feet away, and everything went completely silent. No more creaking and groaning. No nothing. It felt like a long time, but it was probably only like that for 30 seconds to a minute. Time really slows down when you're alone in the dark. And that's when something suddenly brushed past my leg. It could have been a big rat, but there was no scurry sounds as it ran away. Just a silent but forceful swipe of something shooting past my ankle. I fell backwards but caught myself on the broken stairs and didn't move. I don't think I was even breathing. It had been hot that night. I was sweating through my clothes, but now it felt like the temperature dropped to 50 in an instant. I broke out in goosebumps and my teeth chattered. I was terrified. I'm not saying I wasn't, but it was suddenly very cold too. Every creepy, haunted urban explorer video played in my mind, and I started hoping that it was just some squatter, but knew that wasn't the case. A squatter can't make your electronics stop working or freeze out a room. As these realizations dawned on me, something reached out from the pile of rubble that I was leaned against and wrapped impossibly long fingers around my bicep. Its grip was like icy steel, and I screamed higher than I knew my voice could go. I probably couldn't replicate it if I tried. I was so afraid that I thought I was going to pass out. It was pulling at me, like it was trying to bring me inside the pile of rubble. Just when it felt like my arm was going to break off, I heard a sweet sound, the sound of a truck and loud music. The grip vanished, and the air was warm again. Just like that, in an instant. My friend could hear me screaming, even over the music, and rushed inside with her flashlight. I was crying, and I couldn't explain what happened. She asked why I was sitting in the dark. I told her my flashlight wouldn't work. Of course, it worked fine once I tried to show her it wasn't working. My phone also came back on. No problems at all. Still at 50% battery. Fire and rescue came about 20 minutes later and got me out. It was hands down the most embarrassing and horrifying night of my life. It's going to be a long time, if ever, before I try urban exploring again. If I do pick the hobby up, it'll be only during the day and with a lot more caution. This has been happening for a few months now, but I only started writing it down tonight because I just heard myself speak out loud in my apartment while I was sitting in silence. Let me back up a little. I live alone, 1-bedroom apartment in a decent part of town, 3rd floor, quiet neighbors. I'm a night owl. I do audio editing for a podcast network, and I spend a lot of time with headphones on, isolated, focused. It's a solitary life, but I like it. A few months ago, I was editing late, probably 2 a.m., when I caught something strange in one of the files. It was just a casual interview, two people talking about urban planning, harmless stuff. But around the 14-minute mark, I heard my name, clearly, my full name. It came through like a whisper, not from the guests, not from background noise. I know my voice. It was my voice. I replayed it 20 times, ran it through filters, boosted the gain, reversed it, checked for edits. There was no explanation, just this low, breathy whisper in my own voice, saying, "Aaron, can you hear me?" I thought maybe I was losing it, chalked it up to sleep deprivation or audio pareidolia. I didn't mention it to anyone. But it didn't stop. I've heard myself in the hallway when I'm brushing my teeth. Heard myself humming in the shower when I wasn't making a sound. Heard laughter, my laughter, coming from the bedroom while I was in the kitchen. I froze mid-step with a knife in my hand and dish soap still on my fingers. At first I thought maybe I was playing back recordings without realizing it. I checked everything. Disabled smart speakers, disconnected my phone from Bluetooth. Nothing changed. It only happens when I'm alone, though. And then came the night that I heard myself crying. It was soft, from the closet. I didn't even move at first. I just kind of stood in the middle of my apartment, like my brain was buffering. It went on for maybe 30 seconds. And then it stopped all at once. When I finally got the courage to open the door, there was, of course, nothing there. Just coats, boxes, the usual. But the weirdest part, one of my hoodies was wet, like soaked through. I hadn't worn it in weeks. A few days after that, I started locking the closet door at night. And then last week, my sister sent me a voice message, just 5 seconds long. It was me, not just my voice, but me, my tone, my cadence, saying, "Don't listen to her. She's lying." No context, just that one line. I asked my sister where she got it. She said she didn't send it, that she woke up and it was in her sent messages, already marked as read. She thought I sent it. She lives in a different state. We don't prank each other. And she was freaked out too. We got on a video call that night. She kept asking me to say certain words, kept watching my face a little too carefully, like she genuinely wasn't sure that I was me. And that brings us to tonight. About an hour ago, I was sitting at my desk, no headphones this time, no devices on, just reading something on the couch. And behind me from the kitchen, I heard my voice say, "Hey, Aaron, come here a sec." I didn't move. I just stared down at my hands, and I couldn't help but notice that they were damp, sweating profusely. The voice, it sounded casual, like I'd been standing in the kitchen this whole time, talking to myself. And then I heard it again. "Hey, come here." More insistent. My voice still. I slowly turned my chair, just enough to see the kitchen. Empty, lights off. I sat there for a long time. Eventually I got up and turned on every single light. I checked all the cabinets, every closet. Nothing. I know what I heard. I know my own damn voice, and it keeps finding me. Sometimes I hear myself muttering through the walls, too muffled to make out the words, but the rhythm is right. The way I speak when I'm frustrated or afraid. I feel so sane, but this feels so insane. I haven't told anyone besides my sister. I don't really think anyone's going to believe me, or I'm sure they'll just think I'm crazy. And yeah, I'll make an appointment with the doctor, but I can't explain how real it feels. And the voicemail message to my sister, what's that about? Something's going on. Something's in here with me. I know how it sounds, but it's true. So how do I make it stop? How do I get rid of it? I've never told anyone this in full. My wife knows something weird happened, but I've never gone into detail because honestly, I don't think anyone would believe me. I'd prefer to stay anonymous, but I just keep thinking about it over and over, so here goes. This happened about 6 years ago off the coast of North Carolina. I was scuba diving with 2 friends on a wreck that we'd been planning to explore for a while. An old World War II freighter sitting about 90 feet down. Visibility was okay, current wasn't bad. I was the first one down. I should mention that I've been diving for about 15 years. I know my limits. I'm careful with air, depth, decompression. This wasn't my first time diving wrecks either. About 20 minutes into the dive, I broke off slightly from the group to check out a passage under a collapsed portion of the hull. My buddies were nearby, maybe 15 feet off, clearly visible. I saw what looked like an old ladder descending into the sand, half buried. I went down to inspect it, and that's when something changed. The water, it felt thicker, and the temperature, it had dropped, but only around me. It got dark fast. Visibility went from 15 feet to maybe 5 in seconds. It was like a fog bank had rolled in underwater. My dive light started flickering. At first, I thought that it was dying, but I'd just changed the batteries that morning. And that's when I noticed something else. This sound, like a vibration, not mechanical and not marine life. It was low and rhythmic, almost like breathing. Not mine, something big. I turned to signal my buddies, but I couldn't see them anymore. Nothing but cloudy water. I checked my gauges and everything looked fine. I wasn't low on air. I wasn't panicking. Not yet. And then I felt a hand. It closed around my upper arm, firm, cold, and unmistakably human. It wasn't a snag. It wasn't gear. This was a hand. But there was no one there. I spun around fast. My heart was pounding as I did. I was expecting to see one of my friends screwing with me, but no one was there. Just emptiness. My light steadied for a second, and I swear to God, just beyond the beam, I saw a face. Pale, eyes open, but blank. Hair floating upward like seaweed, and then it was gone. I was sort of frozen in place. I didn't know which way was up anymore. My mask fogged slightly, and I realized that I'd started breathing too fast. I forced myself to calm down and check my compass. I turned toward where I thought the wreck was, but it was like the ocean had swallowed it whole. I was just gone from everything. And that's when it got worse. My regulator suddenly stopped pulling air. Not a full failure, just a sudden resistance, like something had clamped down on the flow. My tank had plenty of PSI. I tapped the gauge, nothing. I tried my backup, same thing. In that moment, I was 90 feet underwater, alone, disoriented, and couldn't breathe. Then I felt another touch, this time on my back, not grabbing, pushing, firm and steady. I started rising slowly at first, then faster than I wanted. I should have been inflating my BCD, but I hadn't touched it. My hands weren't even on the controls. Whatever was pushing me, it was guiding me up. I could feel fingers between my shoulder blades. It didn't feel aggressive, just urgent. I broke the surface, gasping, ripping my mask off and coughing. I was almost 100 feet from the dive boat. My friends surfaced about 5 minutes later, panicked. They'd lost sight of me and had been circling the wreck looking for any sign of me. I asked if either of them had grabbed me or seen anyone else down there. They hadn't. I didn't tell them about the hand or the face, not then. Later, when I logged the dive, I checked my depth profile. There was a strange anomaly. My depth jumped erratically for a few seconds before I started ascending, like I'd been lifted. I kept thinking about the face, the hand, the way it felt so deliberate. I even did some digging into the wreck, and it turns out that the ship had gone down in 43 after taking a torpedo. Most of the crew made it off, but 3 were listed as missing, never recovered. Divers say it's one of the more active wrecks, but most people just chalk it up to eerie feelings or cold spots. I know what I felt. Someone or something down there, and it didn't want me to die. Make of that what you will. Not my usual kind of post, but I guess I'm looking for someone who might have gone through something similar. Or maybe just a place to write it down so I don't feel so crazy. Either way, here goes. For context, I live a pretty boring life. Same town my whole life, work from home for a small marketing company. I don't go out much aside from groceries or the occasional coffee shop trip. I've got a small circle, my sister, 2 close friends, and my partner, Jamie. That's about it. It started about 6 months ago. My friend Mia texted me, asking if I'd gotten a new job. I said, no, why? She responded, weird, I saw you at the Shell station on Sycamore wearing a hospital badge. Even waved, but you didn't look at me. Thing is, I never go to that gas station. It's in the opposite direction of everything I do, and I definitely don't work at a hospital. I laughed it off, told her maybe I had a twin that I didn't know about. She joked that my evil twin snubbed her. I didn't think about it again until about a month later. Jamie and I were watching TV when his phone buzzed. It was a missed call and voicemail from his cousin Jack, who lives about an hour away. We listened to the voicemail together. Jack said something like, hey, just saw KARI at the plaza near the theater. Didn't realize you guys were in town. She looked like she was in a rush. I didn't get a chance to say hi. Let me know if y'all want to grab lunch. I was on the couch in sweatpants with a bowl of cereal at the time that Jack said he saw me. And again, the plaza is not somewhere that I've ever been. We both laughed it off. Maybe someone with a similar haircut, whatever. But it kept happening. A cashier at the coffee shop asked if I was feeling better, said I looked sick the day before when I came in. I hadn't been there all week. A neighbor waved at me one morning and later asked if I was house-sitting for someone down the block because she'd seen me coming out of their front door around 7 a.m. That one really unsettled me. Not because she was watching me. If you're from a small town, everyone knows what everyone's doing. Obviously, it unsettled me because I wasn't leaving that house. I don't even know the people in that house. And 7 a.m., I'm barely functioning until 9. But the worst one, the one that made me stop brushing it off, was what happened with my sister. She called me late at night, kind of panicked. I picked up before I could say anything. She said, where did you go? I was confused. I told her that I was at home, in bed. What was she talking about? She said that she'd just seen me outside of her apartment. To be clear, my sister lives about 30 minutes away from me, in a secured building with a gate and keycard access. She told me that she had just parked and was walking up to her door when she saw me across the lot. She waved, and I didn't wave back. Instead, I turned and walked quickly around the corner of the building. She said it was definitely me. Same coat, same posture, same gait. Same sister. She even called out my name. I told her that she'd been mistaken, that I wasn't anywhere near her place, and she didn't believe me at first. Actually, she got kind of upset. Said, "Why would you lie about something like that?" I had to FaceTime her, show her my bedroom, my pajamas, the fact that I was clearly not anywhere near her complex. That was the moment her face changed. I watched the realization wash over her in real time. She said quietly, "I swear to God, it was you. I'd bet my life on it." I asked her to describe what she saw. She said I looked tired, like I was avoiding her, but there was something off. She said my face looked tight, and that was the word she used, like I was forcing it to be neutral. And the way I walked, while familiar, it was a little unnaturally stiff. She thought that I was upset with her, avoiding a conversation. I haven't been to her place in months. Since then, she's been a little nervous with me. Not in a dramatic way, just little things. She double-checks plans, triple-checks, confirms things multiple times. She even asked once, "This is really you, right?" Half joking, but not really. And then just last week, Jamie told me something that really upset me. He said that he woke up around 3 a.m. and he saw me standing at the foot of the bed, just staring at him. When he called my name, I didn't move. He blinked, reached for his phone to turn on the flashlight, and I was gone. But I was asleep next to him the whole time. He swears it wasn't sleep paralysis, says he sat up, that he saw someone who looked exactly like me, just watching. Maybe I'm giving him nightmares. Who knows? We tried to debunk it. He was dreaming, maybe it was sleep paralysis, but he's sure of what he saw. I don't really know what to do with any of this. It's not like I can report it. I'd like to file a complaint about my double impersonating me in public. It sounds insane, but people keep seeing me. Not just seeing, but interacting, waving, talking, watching. And every time, it's almost me, close enough to fool everyone I love, but not quite right. I know it's irrational, but even the idea of mirrors kind of freak me out now. I don't like the idea that there might be something else walking around in my skin. I haven't seen it myself, but I don't think I want to. Because if I ever come face to face with it, I don't know which one of us will still be standing when it's over. I mean, I have no idea what any of it means. I just know that it unsettles me deeply. For this story, we're going back to the early 90s, when I was 18. A little context for my younger friends. There were no cell phones, no internet, and no GPS. If you wanted to meet your friends somewhere, you made plans in advance and prayed that they showed up. If you got lost, you had to stop and ask for directions or learn to read a paper map. A skill I could never master, but it's not important here. Okay, now that everyone's caught up, on with our main event. One weekend, myself and two friends made plans to go camping. We were originally supposed to meet at my house Saturday morning and drive to the site together. But my grandmother had a stroke the day before our trip. Thankfully, it was minor. But she needed someone to get her home and help watch over her for a little while. My mom was a lawyer and in court when it happened, so I drove the hour to Granny's and got settled in. My mom didn't arrive until pretty late Friday night, so I canceled with my friends, and we decided that I would just meet them at the campsite. My gear had already been loaded in the car anyway, and it would be quicker to go straight there. Now, we hadn't actually gone to this spot before. We wanted to try something new, and the place that we heard about was roughly an hour and a half away. I managed to get there by noon. My friends, however, did not. These days, if someone is 15 minutes late, you can call or text, but I just had to wait, and wait, and wait. Especially since it was a long drive, I had to account for if they got a late start, if they got lost on the way, if they stopped for gas or snacks, all of that. After nearly 3 hours, I felt close to death. Boredom is fatal, after all. I drove 15 minutes back to the nearest payphone, and I called my friend's house. No one answered. I called the other friend's house, and again, no answer. So I called my grandmother's house to see if they had left a message. They had not. I went back to the camping grounds and waited for another hour. Nothing. Went back to the payphone and finally got through to my friends. Apparently, Jen's car wouldn't start, and Judy couldn't borrow her brother's car until the next morning, and they couldn't find the paper that I wrote my grandmother's number on. Basically a perfect storm of bullshit. Ultimately, we decided to ditch school on Monday and keep our camping plans anyway. Now I had a choice to make. Drive home and right back again, camp alone, no thanks, or get a hotel. I opted for the hotel room. There was a cheap, run-down spot 15 minutes down the highway, and that was plenty good enough for me. I checked in and planned to watch TV until I fell asleep. On 3 different occasions, the TV randomly shut off by itself, but turned back on no problem. The volume also turned itself up and down at random, which got really annoying, but I blamed it on a janky motel TV and shoddy wiring, because the lights kept dimming and brightening too. On top of that, the people in the room next to me were annoying as hell. I assumed that they must have had kids because it was too chaotic to be anything else. They kept banging into the wall, laughing like little jackals. Not once did I hear their parents do anything about it. But again, it was par for the times. It had been a long, exhausting day. By 10, I was ready to go to sleep and get the night over with. As soon as I turned the lights off, someone started knocking on my door. I got up to check. No one outside. I immediately thought of the kids next door and started getting angry. It was one thing to be loud little shits, but to screw with me directly, that was too far. I shouted into the night that I would call the front desk if they did it again. I got back into bed, and within 10 minutes, it happened again, even louder this time. I ran to the door, but they were already gone. I didn't hear them go back into their room, so they had to be hiding nearby. I looked around the corners, behind the car. Still nothing. And that's when I realized mine was the only car on this side of the lot. I walked to the front desk and told the clerk my story. It was a young girl, probably not much older than me, and the look on her face instantly freaked me out, because she clearly knew something she didn't want to say. I had to drag it out of her. Not only were the rooms next to me empty, the rest of the motel was empty. I was the sole customer that evening. The girl tried to reassure me and get me back to my room, but I was pretty worried about what kind of creep was out there messing with me. Kids were one thing, but now it felt dangerous. Finally, she confessed that lots of people made the same complaints, that their employees never lasted long, because everyone thought the motel was haunted. I hadn't even complained about the lights and TV when she confessed that also happened all the time, even in the lobby. Apparently, some man had kidnapped his 2 children back in the 60s. Pulled a murder-suicide when the cops knocked on their door. I was thoroughly freaked out, but I went back to my room. What else was I going to do? I certainly wasn't going to drive home at that point, but an older, wiser me definitely would have. I got back into bed and there was another loud knock on the door, just as I was finally drifting off. I didn't open the door that time. Instead, I just waited it out. Once it stopped, it didn't start again, and I finally fell asleep until about 3 a.m. And that's when the covers were violently ripped off of me. I bolted upright to see them piled on the floor at the foot of the bed. My heart was already racing, and that alone was enough to do me in. But then I noticed movement in the corner. There was a straight-up transparent girl staring at me. Literally transparent. I could see the wallpaper print through her body. She looked like she was 8 years old, but half of her head was missing. I felt sick and terrified and numb all at once. I wanted to scream, but nothing would come out. Then, right in front of me, the girl walked through the wall and disappeared. That's all I needed. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my bag in a single movement. Never before or since have I moved that fast. I didn't go back to the front desk. I just got in my car and sped out of there like something was chasing me, because I assumed it was. Suddenly, sleeping in the campground parking lot didn't seem so crazy at all, or scary. I couldn't actually sleep, of course, but I had no problem waiting until dawn. Once the sun was up, I found a diner, got some breakfast. My friends actually showed up on time, but they didn't believe my story about the motel. I dared them to stay there for a night if they were so skeptical, but they weren't willing to try it for themselves. The camping trip was fine once we got into it. Everything was so normal that the abnormal was easy to let go of, but I never completely forgot. This is the first time that I've told this full story since telling my friends. I know the whole thing sounds crazy, but if there was a safe place to share my experience, this felt like the one. Thanks for listening. I've read the stories on here. Usually they end with something awful or someone losing their mind, being replaced, or worse. Those are the fears anyway. Maybe mine's a little different. Not less terrifying, just different. I want to start by saying that I've never really believed in the supernatural. Still not sure that I do. I'm a logistics coordinator for a moving company. I wear steel-toed boots and drink gas station coffee for fun. I'm not exactly the type to go chasing shadows. But this thing, this version of me, I've seen it 4 times now. Only ever in profile, never straight on. And the last time, it saved my life. The first time was in a parking garage, middle of the day, sun slicing through the concrete slats. I'd just come out of the dentist. My mouth was numb, brain was fuzzy. I got to the second level, and there I was, leaning against the far wall. Arm bent, foot kicked back like I was waiting for someone. I stopped walking. It was like recognizing someone you knew. It looked exactly like me. Same jacket, same posture, same little bend in the wrist I didn't realize I had until I saw it from the outside and looked down. But the head was turned slightly away. I couldn't see the eyes, just the slope of the nose, the mouth in resting concentration. I blinked, and it was gone. Nothing there but an oil stain and a candy wrapper drifting in the breeze. I figured I imagined that. I thought it was really weird, but I did move on. The second time was 2 weeks later. I was walking downtown, rushing toward the train. I glanced in a window. Some empty storefront with a for lease sign, and I saw myself inside. Same clothes, just there. It was like a delayed reflection, but the building was empty. No glass, just black space. And the face again half turned, like it was trying not to be caught looking back at me. That time, for some reason, it shook me. I started joking about it to my friends just to make myself feel better. Guess I got a twin stalking me. Hope he's hotter. That kind of thing. But I really couldn't shake it. Those off-angle glimpses of myself, not doing anything menacing, just watching. Then came the dreams. Not nightmares exactly, just flashes. Me, in profile, standing near places I hadn't been to in years. My high school football field, the corner booth at a diner that my mom used to take me to. It was always quiet and always still in these dreams. And then something changed. Last Thursday, I had a morning shift in one of our warehouse units. I was logging inventory and prepping a shipment to head across state lines. Same routine as always. The loading dock has this wide, corrugated ramp that leads out to the back lot. I was wheeling a dolly toward the open bay door when I froze. Standing just beyond the ramp next to the dumpster was me. Not close, maybe 20 yards off, but unmistakable. Same clothes. Posture was mine. The scar on my jaw from a bike accident at 16. I didn't need to get closer to know that it was there. But this time it was not the same. This time it moved. Not towards me. Away. Slowly turning its body without ever showing me the full face. And then it pointed. Just once. To the side of the ramp. A sharp, deliberate gesture. And then it turned and walked behind the dumpster out of sight. I didn't follow. My skin was crawling, legs locked in place. And then the dolly tipped slightly forward, and I snapped back into motion. I adjusted my grip, rolled down the ramp, and stopped. There was a hairline crack on the ramp that I'd never noticed before. At first, nothing major, but as I bent down, I saw that the concrete had buckled just enough at the bottom lip of the ramp. It had a 4-inch drop I hadn't accounted for. That might not sound like much, but if I'd kept going, pushing the weight that I had, the dolly would have hit that edge wrong, probably would have tipped, and me with it. Maybe a broken wrist, maybe worse. Could have knocked my head right into the steel bay frame. The kind of dumb accident people say freak after. I stopped, looked around. There was no one in the lot, no one but me. I marked the crack with hazard tape and got someone to help me move the heavier stuff. All day I couldn't stop thinking about it, though. Whatever that thing is or was, it didn't try to hurt me. It tried to warn me. It didn't speak or scream or anything crazy, it just pointed. And I listened. That's the part that I keep coming back to. I listened. I've started checking reflective surfaces without realizing it. Windows, puddles, metal siding, always from the side. I keep half expecting to see myself again, just out of sync, far enough to be real, but not real. I just don't know what it is. A guardian, a glitch, some fractured part of my own awareness. I know what I saw, though, and I know that because I saw it and because I followed it, I'm still here, uninjured, still alive. I guess whatever happens next, I can count on the fact that I'll be watching. Both of me, I guess. When I first moved out to New York, I rented a downstairs mother-in-law apartment for $600 a month. There was a full bathroom down there, water, garbage, even cable was paid for. It was a beautiful house, 10 minutes east of Buffalo. The couple that owned the house were also the ones living above me, and for the most part, we got along incredibly well. They were in their mid-50s, treated me like a daughter. I was in my early 20s and greatly appreciated the kindness, especially while I acclimated. It wasn't like an everyday thing, but anytime I had a question or needed anything, their side of the adjoining door would always be unlocked for me. Out of respect, though, it was seldom that I'd use that door. There were a few plumbing issues I had to go up there for, but I tried not to be a nuisance while I was under their roof. Besides a leaky toilet, the only other issue I came to them about, well, they weren't as overly helpful for, and it got kind of weird. I'd been there for a little over a week. I'd basically just moved in, and the little belongings I did take with me were still stacked in boxes. Most of them were set up against the wall, but I had a few by my bed that I was using as a makeshift table. The box I was using carried my old childhood stuffed animals, the ones I promised myself I'd never get rid of. I'm sure a lot of adults had or have a box like this. I had my alarm clock and a can of soda on it when I started to fall asleep. Laying in bed, I'm turned to my side, facing the box table. My eyes are closed at the time, but I hear the sound of the aluminum can being slid off of the cardboard. I open my eyes just in time to watch the soda fall off of the edge and spill onto the ground. I got up right away to clean it, using a towel to soak up the liquid. I was down there next to the box, and it looked like one of the flaps were unfolded and raised a bit. It hadn't happened the first 2 nights of me using it the same way. I didn't know how it could have scooted off the side of the box like that, but the mess occupied my primary focus. The next night, though, when it happened again, I jumped up with a little more curiosity as to how it happened again. I knew I'd put my drink dead center of the box, so when I heard it slide all the way off and splash onto the floor, I was upset. I got up and ran for a towel to clean it, but that night, when the floor was dry, I didn't immediately go back to bed. Instead, I looked all around the box, inside and out, trying to figure out what the problem was, but I couldn't find anything. The next thought was that it was a rodent or something like that, until one of the stuffed animals, one with electronic bits, started moving and singing inside the box. Its startling, distorted version of Yankee Doodle Dandy acted like an alarm in the silent, dark room, and I thrashed through the stuffed animals until I found the one that was active. It was a teddy bear, dressed in a Civil War costume. When I grabbed it in my hands, its music stopped. The batteries were already missing when I went to pull them out. I've had that stuffed bear probably the longest out of all of them. It's old. Could have been wiring, I guess, but without any power from batteries. It didn't make sense to me. The more I thought about it, the more it made me feel uneasy. It also wasn't the reason for the box flap opening, just a separate thing that happened in tandem. The stairway that led to the door upstairs had old wood steps. I also had a door that I could shut at the bottom of the stairs in my room, and on multiple occasions through the wall, I heard the upstairs door open, and the creaks of the wood, like someone was coming down the stairs. But the door would never open. The footsteps would never go back up the stairs either, only down. Worse than that, I woke up a handful of times to see that the stairwell door was wide open. Every time I would have to get out of bed and close it again, making sure to never look into the actual stairwell as I did. Random stuff like this kept happening, so I finally went upstairs to ask the couple point blank if their house was haunted. I didn't care if I looked crazy, and it was either that or start the conversation by asking if they have large rodents. However, they were still offended, raised their eyebrows like my question hung with a rotten odor in the kitchen. I said, "This is a pretty old house. Do you think it's haunted?" And to this, both of them got looks of repulsion on their face. The woman answered my question in a snappy tone, saying, "Not in the least bit." I just said, "Oh, okay," and then walked back downstairs feeling foolish. I wasn't in a position to move, and there was no way that I'd find a place to rent for that cheap. I knew that as fact. What I also knew as fact was that no matter what the couple upstairs thought, their house was haunted. I'm convinced most everything on the East Coast is haunted, because that's where the American story began. People have been living and dying on the East Coast way longer than the West. All the architecture's old. It's extremely beautiful, but haunted up the kazoo. I had 2 windows in the room, one on the door that pointed toward the side driveway, and another window that pointed toward the front yard. I once got up to go to the bathroom, and I saw a man standing outside the fence of the front yard, staring at the house. He was partially lit by a street light further down the road. By their stature, I assumed it was a man that I was looking at. It looked like he was wearing a black raincoat with the hood up. He was more of a silhouette than anything. I stayed low even though my blinds were down and the room was dark. I didn't think that he could see me, but I couldn't be sure. It wasn't clear what he was even doing there. I watched him until I couldn't hold my bladder, and in the time I ran to use the bathroom, he was gone by the time I got back to the window. My stomach sank when I saw the gate to the front yard was unlatched. It sank even further when the other window lit up from the motion sensor lights in the driveway. My back was already against that wall. The light coming in from the driveway made a perfect illuminated square in the carpet of my room. And then it started to blink, almost like Morse code, but in reality, it was a person's body blocking the light every time they looked into my room. The shadow rapidly went back and forth outside the window. The phone, which was a landline at the time, was all the way across the room. I didn't want to risk being spotted. I thought the couple upstairs had to be aware of what was going on, but all was quiet upstairs. All was quiet everywhere. It came to me that as fast as the guy was moving outside, he wasn't kicking up the gravel. Still, I watched his shadow continue to dart around. Then one swoop was his final, and the window's light became a stagnant yellow glow until the sensor's timer shut them off. That's when I felt safe, leaving my crouch spot on the wall and returning to my bed. I moved to New York for a corporate job at the clothing company, and anticipating my career path, I expected New York to be my new permanent residency. I wanted it to feel like home, starting with the place I was currently staying at, but no matter how much I decorated that room, fear would envelop the aesthetics. It was probably my internal stress, probably what made me feel so isolated at work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that people didn't like me. I wouldn't even say didn't like, because that would mean I crossed their minds past eye contact. I myself felt like the ghost in the office that I worked at. Nobody on my team asked me questions. Nobody looked at me twice, besides to ask if I'd finished whatever project I was on. It was fast-paced, stressful, and overwhelming, to do with a lack of sleep, especially. And I'd often find myself behind that blockade of tired fog in the mornings because my sleep being interrupted by various but unyielding disturbances. Ambiguous thumps and bumps, those were a regular occurrence that the couple upstairs had no clue about. I never argued, but I knew they were lying. Some of these noises were big enough to shake the house, like someone throwing a sledgehammer through the wall. In a series of horrendous events one night, I'm woken up by a tremendous boom. The sound lasts half a second, and the house is silent again. When I sat up in bed, in the pitch-black room, I see a line of light under the bathroom door. It was directly across from my bed, and the lights were unmistakably on. Unfortunately, I knew with all my soul that I'd turned that light off earlier. The room was dark when I went to sleep. I contemplated just leaving it on, but what I couldn't ignore was the crying that began shortly after I'd sat up. Retelling this part feels like a twisted dream, but I wake up to adrenaline pumping through me at an immodest rate. As I got to the illuminated door, I put my ear against it, and I could still hear the sound of crying coming from inside. And that's when I turned the handle, and I opened it to see a bony, cadaverous woman sitting in the bathtub. She was staring down into the water, sobbing, but slowly raised her head to meet my terrified frozen stare. She was completely nude, long black hair that hung down past her shoulders, with a few tangled strands in front of her face. The eyes that looked back at me were blue. The whites had changed into an irritated red from the tears. Her skin was covered in scars. Her chest, arms, and thighs all had long marks of healed tissue. As scary as the sight was, I was also struck with a deep sadness for the woman. Through our gaze, she shared her hurt with me. My body absorbed the sorrow, and I felt her loneliness, and it physically brought me to my knees. I accompanied her weeping with my own soft whimpers. It's like all of my insecurities, anxieties, the intrusive thoughts that I tried to keep away, they all came at me at once, like a pack of wolves to my worn-down spirit. I was on my hands and knees, my mind sliding down a spiral into darker and darker territory, when a small splash of water sprinkles across my fingers. More water slaps onto the ground, and it sounds like it's sloshing from over the edge of the tub. The spritz I got pulled me off of my dejected slide and teleported me back into the moment, the rational feelings that came with it, which was pure heart-galloping terror. Right when that primal adrenaline shot through me, it re-tightened my senses and my legs somersaulted me backwards, while my hand somehow closed the door behind me. I don't know how I did a move like that. My body acted without me. I didn't sleep in the bed that night. I grabbed my blankets, and I went to go sleep the rest of the night in my car, but even that was short-lived. In my passenger seat, I intentionally laid facing away from the room, but I made the mistake of looking over my shoulders. I saw her face, her blue eyes, looking out at me through the window. I started to cry again too, but this time it was because I was out of options. Seeing her again only confirmed that yes, along with the shit job I moved out here for, it's confirmed. My place of residency is no longer a viable option. In my car, I started the engine. Headlights turned on, radio turns on. I see it's close to 4 a.m. I would have had to be up in a half an hour to get ready for work. That obviously wasn't going to happen. This time, I let out one of those end-of-the-world cries. I think I had a tiny mental breakdown after that because I became absolutely enraged, blood-boiling angry. How fucked this situation was. I was punching my steering wheel, screaming at the top of my lungs, but that didn't feel cathartic enough. So I unrolled my window, held out my left arm, and raised my middle finger high. Then I continued screaming at the top of my lungs, fuck you, fuck you. And then I peeled out of their driveway, making sure my back tires blasted gravel at the metal garage door. I was never coming back. I kept my window down, yelling, fuck you, New York, fuck you, all the way to state lines. My tears stung with resentment, hurting my eyes and making me more aggravated the whole 2-hour trip home. There's more than a few toll booths with dents on the side of their change deposit bowls. I haven't stopped saying it, and I'll keep saying it until the day I die on my deathbed. I want my last words that I utter to my loved ones to be, fuck New York. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me. Whether it's your first time or you're a regular, your support means the world. We've got brand new episodes every Friday, and keep those eyes open for those deep sleep videos. Subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll never miss a thing. Special thanks to the Darkest Hour channel members, Lori TESDAHL, Sarah Marie, Robert Bailey, COLTDADDY Eagle, MALLORY Dominguez, KARI Watkins, PILAR TREDEN WIXSON, Larry Hill, RIPLEY, JOJO STARCHER, Mary Patrick, Debbie LAFRENIERE, Julie Bourdelais, Jennifer BECK, MARINA LACHNER, Make Hamilton Home, Evan Pratt, Mary Hineline, Katharine Yes.ImtherealKatie Isabelle, Landshark, Danielle Hecht, Veronica Mckiernan, Keziah Pietersen, Amber Baker, Khris Lauzon, Kara Geos, Marvin Allen, Forgotten Ruins TV, Raven Wolf, Carlos, Stacia Giletti, and Nate Black. Big thanks to those who shared their stories, and a huge shout out to all of our patrons whom we appreciate so very much. Tracy S., Mary H., Tanya F., Tamra K., Monica L., Zoe Watt, Shelley B., Donald C., Marion T., Rat Girl, Alicia S., Aaron G., Nikki H., Mr. Revenant, Naz K., Brendan G., Paul T., Nicholas C., Tony P., Lizanne, Arlene F., Adrian, T.F. Parham, Jason G., Lori T., and Bobo Jenkins. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/thedarkesthour or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, Amanda, darkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour, YT. Stay spooky.